My name is Blythe Milligan, Grace Sharkey here. Everything is Logistics presented by SPI Logistics. And we're going to talk a little bit about the conference season recap. So, Grace, you have been all over. So, first, tell me how your approach has changed from being on the media side of things, where you're working for a company that's, producing the events, to the flip side, where you're the one attending the events, planning which ones you're going to. What does that role switch look like for you from a strategic standpoint?
Yeah, so it's interesting. Great question. Because, I do come from more of the opposite side, right? Of like being a content creator within an event that platform is putting on. And I will say what's nice is like and I think this is part of the reason I end up going into marketing even more so was I see what people pay for a lot of this stuff. And I think being more of like in that content creating space when I would work with people, it's like, okay, how can we make sure you get the most out of this, right? I think when I think of in-person events and when I see companies going to them, it's about not sitting next to the table the whole time, getting out there, shaking hands, right? And getting, I think from at least from what I used to do, getting clips, getting articles, getting other deliverables at the event that will also pay off in the
Hmm.
long run too, right? Um, and now that I'm in the other side of this, though, like from an orderful standpoint, there's a few things that I think are very interesting, and I kind of look at conferences a little bit differently now. And I hope that conference companies, I think those who are very successful at it have proven this. You have to think about what the outcome is for the people that are coming. So a perfect example is like one who are the buyers or decision makers at that conference that you're going to. I think sometimes I often see companies going to a conference when the either the decision makers aren't going to be there, or even more so the users like aren't going to physically be there, right? So to give a little background on Orderful, we're an EDI company, and the last two conferences that we went to were user group conferences. One was for NetSuite, and the other one we went to recently was for Dynamics, Microsoft ERP systems, etc. And what's fascinating about going to those is one, yes, we do, of course, connect with users, right? But we also really focus on what we call kind of like partners in our space. So this would be, by the way, throughout this, if you're watching this and you see me go from dark to light, that's just because I only have one light on. That's the sunlight. So don't worry about that. You're
Spooky
not
vibe.
missing it. Yes. But we work with partners. So basically, the easiest way to explain it is almost like they're technology consultants that will work with large clients for when they are transitioning from different systems, ERPs. Maybe they acquired a company and they're trying to figure out how to get everyone on the same platform.
Hmm.
We spend a lot of time at those user events connecting with those individuals so that when they meet future clients, or even actually, like, what's really impressive is a multitude of those type of partners that would come up to us and say, listen, we're in the middle of something right now and the EDI is holding us back from getting this done, which oftentimes happens. Like you find the perfect system you want to move to, and then you're like, they hit you with this giant EDI bill or expense and you didn't even think about that. And so I can't tell you how many people went up to us and like, we have a project that's stalled right now, we need to get this moving ASAP. So it's like a good place to meet people in that, but also it's really fun because it is physical users of the software. It would be like going, I hope people don't take this as shade, but it'd be like going to like oh, well, actually, this is kind of turned into, it'd be like going to a FreightWaves conference, but it's sonar focused, right? So like everyone there is like the carrier reps who are physically actually using sonar every single day. And no offense, not the CEO who like barely touches it. And so it's cool because in that setting, right? What we find, at least at Orful, is that if we can physically show the technology working, then we really win people over. Whereas like a CEO or CFO level, they're going to want to learn more about how quickly the project went, how much cost went into it, right? It's different conversations in different places. And so I think it's smart to think about the best way to attack the individuals who will be at those conferences when you're trying to decide which ones to go to. So there have been ones that have crossed our table, I guess my table, my desk that I have at home. Remote work's so weird. How do you even talk about it? That go through my email where I'm like, not that this wouldn't be a good conference, but we just aren't going to meet people there in the opportunities that are available there that are going to hook people. And it's also just not a place like I think sometimes there's some conferences out there where depending on the company that you are, it might be better for you to just physically go to shake hands, to see people, to maybe see your customers all in one place. And instead of like spending $10,000 on a booth, spend $7,000 for like a 30-person dinner in town where you can get everyone together and if anything maybe work on just keeping those customers on board, or vice versa. Maybe it's not the best place for you to pick up like for a booth, but it's a good place to invite 30 partners, right? Or co-host a party together. So I think what like being on the spending side of conferences, right? The side where I'm writing the check and not receiving the check. It's opened my mind a little bit more to like being strategic on what the outcome is and just knowing your buying triggers, knowing where to meet people at those buying triggers, and knowing that like, every lead isn't a good lead, but if you can go to an event and get 10 like really good partners, that is going to make up for the cost. So yeah, like for us, I think, especially with what Orderful's doing, and I'm sure other SaaS companies out there, I think I actually understand more the demos better. Right. Physically having people see how your technology works in real time. Like next year, we're going to be doing more of that just based off of like what we've seen so far. And also knowing your competitors, right? Like EDI is actually a hard space to kind of demo because it does involve like a lot of, well, not with Orderful, but it can involve mapping and kind of like this behind the scenes, like the stuff that wouldn't be friendly demo wise. But actually, like what we've seen is going to some of these events and watching some of our competitors demo. We're like, oh my God, if we could just demo, like people would quickly see the difference of customer experience between the two, because that demo was miserable and our demo is user friendly and smooth and fast and easy. So
Wait, so you have like employees or coworkers that are like going to the competitors and getting the demo and like getting the insider? It's like corporate espionage. I love it.
Oh, yeah, well, 100%. I will say, and I will actually say too, shout out to competitors. I'm not gonna say your name out there, but like Eric did an excellent panel
Eric,
at
CEO of Orderful.
yes, yeah. With one of our really great customers, Everyman Jack, which if you guys know, deodorants, etc. They're a
Okay.
growing brand out there. And we did a panel with Everyman Jack just about a trending product and how you make sure that your systems are ready for you to say yes to every retailer that wants you on their shelves, and what you need infrastructure wise to make sure that happens. And Everyman Jack had a really interesting story because not only were they switching ERPs, they were switching EDI providers, and they come from they have a board, they have investors, and the investor, it had to be done at a certain time. All of our competitors said it's not going to happen. We said definitely we can make this happen. Like the CFO was there and he stood up at the end and was like, I don't have a question, but I just want to say, like, I put my job on the line that this project would be done and you guys pulled it off. Like, and so anyways, I will say to get into that room, they scan every badge. So you have leads and stuff. And yeah, our competitors were in there. Those sneaky, they're sitting in the back, little sneaky guys. But
Well,
yeah, no, I mean, maybe, hey, for all those listening, you can also use these conferences to do that, right? Like
true.
see how your competitors are also, playing that conference. What are they investing in? What parties are they throwing? What is getting people talking? And then replicate that or find a better way to do that in the future as well.
No, that's super smart because there was a post that I had read recently, and it was a lady that was, I mean, her company sells like AI agents, and so I guess reading between the lines, they were at a recent conference and they had a booth, and her numbers were like, oh, 127 badge scans. Guess how many of them were actually qualified leads? And she was like three. She's like, imagine, how many qualified leads you could get, automatically without having to spend the human and the financial capital
Yep.
of going to an event. And it's like, well, I think there was a couple like valuable comments in the thread of course, you're probably going to say that, but what kind of pre-qualifying were you doing before you did
Totally.
the badge scan? And
Yeah.
then also from the approach of like, who are you putting at the booths? Are you putting salespeople that are kind of going to be a little bit overwhelming, maybe for the casual person that's just walking up and maybe
Yeah.
wanting to learn a little bit more about the company? Where they made a suggestion is that you should actually have like your account managers and
Yeah.
your developers there that
Yes.
can better understand what you're going through, and then they can talk from personal experience of how they've implemented or
Yes.
integrated similar customers. And I thought that was a really interesting approach, where maybe you could have a combo of
Yes.
some sales reps that are great at talking to people, but if you have a developer or an engineer that is experienced in the onboarding, like in the trenches
Yes.
type work, then you have them there to explain exactly what, speaking to those pain points that maybe, some of the orderful folks were speaking to, or some of the perspective
Yeah.
clients that were coming to your booth.
And with those user conferences, that's exactly what you have to be prepared for. I mean, I'll
Mhm.
be honest, like you send me to like a more like executive level type of conference, I'll be able to talk EDI all day to a point that they'll understand, right? But those user conferences, when it's like the supply chain coordinator who literally did half the mapping for EDI comes up to you and starts asking these really technical questions, I'm like, you want to talk to my girl Alexa, like, and and that's who like locks that lead down, is someone who's like, this is how we're going to onboard you, walks them through it, lets you know what you need to be prepared for. So it's very smart to think of it that way. And like, for example, um we have other events coming down the pipeline. A great one would be like Manifest, right? Where that one, we might not bring as many technical people because like likely the supply chain EDI specialist for Skims, shout out Nadia, isn't gonna be there, right? But someone like Nadia is, who's gonna be able to like high level have conversation. So we likely bring less technical people to that, more AEs, more the salesy team, um, maybe a technical person just in case the one off. But yeah, it's interesting to like kind of think through that. Think about the messaging that you have on your um uh setup, right? But even down to like where you're putting your booth, I like have found fascinating too. Like, one, right? We all know like if you want the good booths, you got to think almost a year ahead of time. That's like the
Mm.
one thing that I've been learning, that when I'm making budgets, letting people know, listen, if we want a better booth the following year, we have to put that almost into planning for this year. But if you can't get a good booth, like look for ends of walkways, like think of like how people are maneuvering through a conference. Look, like we were really smart because while we were late on choosing our booth, we did put our booth at the NetSuite conference right next to like the drink station, like where they're serving cocktails and stuff all night. So like
Or the foot
we
traffic.
yeah, we got a lot of foot. So, all of that comes together at some point in time. So it's not, if you're not going to spend big bucks, be strategic on like the messaging that you put on there. And also like I just find I'm the type of person where I'm like, I like to walk around, I like to talk to people and naturally almost collect leads, compared to just like, I hate a sales team that just stands at a booth, like that's you have to be able to walk around, you have to think. And so like, for instance, knowing that we probably do a little bit more walking around at the Dynamics conference where we had a smaller booth in the back, we put QR codes on all of our signage so that if someone wasn't there to answer questions, we at least got them interacting with our website, getting their information through different ways, leaving cards, different things like that, so that we could follow up later down the line. But you almost have to be realistic in what you physically can do with the amount of money you're putting into these, and figure out how to get the best return on that as well.
Yeah, because it really there's a lot of discussion because we are in the midst of like the peak
Yeah.
season of conferences, and and especially from like the attendee side or like I guess the media side, which I find myself in, it can be really overwhelming to decide which ones to go to and why
Yeah.
because there's so much work. Like Manifest, for example, it takes weeks of work
Yeah.
ahead of time, which I'm, especially for someone like in your role, I'm sure you're working on Manifest like months and months in
Yeah.
advance. But like for a full like focus for me is weeks in advance for a conference like Manifest, and then figuring out like a blueprint of the people that I want to talk to and why,
Yes.
because the networking can be really intense and it can be really draining. And so you have to kind of be intentional about where you're spending your time and your energy and focus. Melanie Patterson, who is with Integrity Transport Group, she actually had a really good video on this. And she mentioned in the caption, she said, conferences will test your focus. You can come back inspired or distracted. And she said, the difference is intention. You can get caught up in socializing instead of networking, fashion shows instead of partnerships, thirsting for happy hour vibes instead of thirsting for knowledge. And a few things that I do to move with intention are map out the connections my business needs a week prior, study the room and execute with a firm handshake. And then when the party starts, I'm already in execution mode. It's just me, some room service, and a laptop full of scheduled emails to send to leads for the win. And I thought that is such a perfect approach from like a business owner perspective of how to best value or manage your time so that you're going to play a ton of catch up when you get back. And this is something that I've had to work on in the past is, I get back from events and I'm so exhausted just from peopling so much and my inbox is just overwhelming. And it takes a long time to play catch up. But then by the time that I want to send those follow-up emails, it's a couple weeks later and
Yeah.
I've probably missed the boat in that regard. And so what I love that intentional approach of like not going out like super late. We'll see if I'll listen to that my own advice,
Mm.
here in Vegas, which
Yeah.
is, a little challenging to do. But I do think that, having something to say or even like a scheduled email template that you can quickly send after the fact
Yes.
using your notes app in order to document who you're going to send that templated email out to, just to, hey, it was great meeting you. Hopefully we can connect in the future. Something super short and sweet, because you got to also consider that those folks that you were connecting with, their email inboxes are going to be overloaded too. So
Yeah.
when do you respond? I think it was Lars, friend of the show with Transflow. He mentioned that with his emails that he strategically sends them days later after a conference, not immediately after, because he knows that those inboxes are going to be completely filled. So it's
Yeah.
usually like 3 to 4 days after an event is when he'll send a follow-up. So with
Yeah.
all the talk sort of surrounding around, what conferences you should go to, Brad Perling had a great post the other day on how, conferences should actually be moved to 1-day events instead of 3-day events. I kind of like the middle of like a 2.5 day event, because I
Yeah.
do agree that like the last day of most events is challenging to keep people there. Because his post was more around like people have already checked out by the third day. So just cut off the third day and just make it more impactful into one full day. And keep in mind of like how you want to facilitate those high level conversations. But to your earlier point, I think it really, really makes an impact when you can have an idea of who the actual attendees are going to be at the conference, and then how you can sort of deploy your staff to best suit those needs. Are you going to spend more salespeople? Are you going to send media people? Are you going to, send those engineers that can answer those dev questions? I think, a strategic approach is probably in the best plan for most companies when thinking about how you're going to tackle which conferences to go to and why, because there's never been more conferences than what we're experiencing now. I think at
Yeah.
least a dozen this month alone. So you really have to be strategic when deciding where to go and why.
Yeah. And I would say that people putting on the conferences, like, just be apparent and smart about that. Hmm, there's a conference that's out there that for example, they truly understand the importance of shippers showing up to it. And so therefore they ask the shippers to use the app, make appointments. Sometimes they'll offer them, free opportunities to go to event, but they understand, okay, if the shippers are setting meetings, then we're gonna get more logistics providers, more carriers to the event, etc. So think about that. Think about what the outcome is that most of those people that are going to spend that money want, right? A shipper, likely outside of like food shippers, they probably don't have a budget for events, right? Because it's like, okay, most shippers aren't sitting around saying like, oh, I should go to a conference to find my next 3PL, right? Because they're like, these guys are in my email box or my phone
They're
24/7.
actively hiding their badge
Yeah.
like, I know one
Yes.
shipper in particular that was in charge of, like, forestry products.
Well,
He is
I tell you, this light is a ghostly power today. It's just doing whatever it wants.
If you're
Fine.
just listening, that Grace has she's tried to set up a spooky light for, we're recording this around Halloween, so she tried to set up a spooky light off to the side that's kinda, like,
I
purpley.
don't even have it connected to Wi-Fi right now. That's a
It's
crazy
maybe
part.
well, we did open the show with enhanced spiritual activities are starting to happen, so maybe this is what we are experiencing, especially as I bring up sort of a very similar topic, in regards to conferences, because there's a lot of, I've seen a little bit of a debate around sort of the pay-to-play mindset,
Yeah.
people are just doing their best when it comes to putting on conferences. They're just trying to get the best editorial up on stage. When you got to balance the business side of it, of course, too, because these events. I don't know if you've ever been to like a cheap conference. I have, and where they like don't serve food.
Been a while.
There's way too many talks going on. Have you ever been to a conference that like doesn't serve like food? Which conference food is not the best. So you might think like, oh, I'll just go get some food, and around the hotel. Well, guess what? Everybody is doing that.
Yeah,
And it's an
totally.
insane line. And everybody is just kind of stressed because food isn't provided.
Yeah.
So there's lots of costs that go into putting on events. So you do have to balance the people that are paying to be there. Everybody's essentially paying to be there, but there's a lot of, I guess, sort of debate around like the pay to play mindset. But you can do both because these
Yeah.
events are super expensive, and then you also want to make sure that you're covering your costs and paying the people who are putting on the event as well. So another sort of relevant debate is around like pay to play awards, and you had a take that you
Yeah.
wanted to share around the pay to play awards. So let's hear it.
Yeah, I told Blythe before we started this is gonna be my favorite marketing trend. Because people listen, we'll just say it. We're gonna say it. The Freight Tech Awards came out this past week, and we'll get into I think who's on that here in a second. I was actually surprised to see a few people not on there. I assume they didn't pay to play. But I will say, like, if you would have asked me 5 years ago, pay to play, we always make fun of the Forbes 30 under 30, right? Like, that's also pay to play. If you didn't know, it is. It- at first I'd say like dumb, stupid, doesn't make sense,
Well,
but
hold on. Just to give people I guess a background on what pay to play is. So
yeah,
typically, especially when it comes to like Forbes or even like traditional print mags, when you say pay to play, you're traditionally an advertiser that's already supporting that
to-
publication.
totally, yeah,
And so, but what we're referring to, especially with specific to like the Freight Tech Awards, where that is you pay to submit your company.
yes,
And then a panel of judges goes through a judging process. You have to pay for software, first of all, to allow the judges to be able to vote on those different materials.
yeah,
I don't know if you've ever been a judge, but I have before in like some B2B marketing awards, and it's a lot of time that
yeah,
is required for you to look through everything, provide a detailed response. It takes a lot of hours, and I wasn't getting paid for it, but I did get, sometimes they throw you like a gift card or something.
yeah, yeah,
But
yeah,
that stuff takes time and
yeah,
money. So I somewhat get the charge a $500 fee in order to submit to the awards, because the marketing you're going to get afterwards is going to
exactly.
justify that expense. So I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, and I think that's exactly my point. My caddy point would be, I'd love to go through your P&L and see what you've spent other money on. Because for instance, I think paying $500 for a FreightWaves award, knowing that we've probably spent a lot more money on golf, is kind of thrilling to me. But yes, to the non-caddy side of me would say, yeah, I mean, first of all, third-party validation of any type is going to be big for your company no matter what. Those B2B awards are big for that. It's proof that you're legit. It's proof that people know who you are. You're right, because Blythe just said it. Oftentimes it goes to, I can tell you right now, I don't know everyone that judges the FreightWaves events, the FreightWaves ones through the consulting company, but they're reaching out to people that I'm guarantee you follow and watch on LinkedIn, etc. They're people that you know. There's tons that you don't, but they are people that you know, right? So it's a third party evaluation through peers in some way. And studies have shown that industry awards show about average of 37% increase in inbound customer inquiries because of it, that recognition. So a lot of that's the top of funnel leads that you're probably looking for in that too. Now, award winning, of course, is going to boost any awareness. I think, especially in the AI age of LLMs and those search engines, chat GPTs of it all, that stuff does count. Again, we don't know the perfect formula yet for any of that stuff, but those do come up often when you're searching who's the best out there, right? If you say who's the top EDI provider, oftentimes it's gonna, depending on if you're using deep research or not, it's gonna pull literally top 10 list, etc. Of course, we all know when we go on websites and we see those badges on their sites, it also increases the chance of you reaching out. There have been studies that show it can actually increase conversion rates into double digits. So I think that's huge. 42%, just a couple of studies I looked into this, trust badges on sites can increase conversions up to 42%, especially for newer, less established brands, right? So where, like, sure, is C.H. Robinson making that list and then seeing a 42%? Probably not. But these startups who've raised millions of dollars to spend on stuff anyways, that stuff really does matter to them in the thick of it all. So, of course, credibility is a big one. But I think what matters is, it's an easy press pickup. It's an easy thing to link back to on your site. It's something simple to bring. There was an award, actually. So, this actually wasn't, we didn't pay for this at all. It's just because the work that we do at NetSuite, but to kind of showcase the value. At Sweet World this year, Orderful got the Partner of the Year award for our EDI work. We've built a native connector that's really helped out a lot of NetSuite customers. And for NetSuite, the reason they love that is because now when people are switching over to NetSuite, they don't have to worry about this headache of EDI. Well, there's recently an award that I applied for that this award fell perfectly into what that retail award was asking for. And we work with a lot of retailers through that NetSuite work. So it was a perfect way for me to kind of put a cherry on top of a sundae for that application. And that also was for a award that's not, pay for either. So, there it goes. Yeah, I see you. I see you, Queen, over there changing my lights on and off. We'll just do it in the dark. So yeah, I think on the sarcastic side, I've seen people spend you know what? If I turn this off,
The light is starting to malfunction a bit.
it doesn't make any sense what's happening, but we'll let that happen. We'll just look at this natural light. We're killing it. But one, I just think of what I see companies spend money on. I'm like, listen, I don't think this is a drop in the bucket for the outcome it could potentially give to you. And two, it is big. I mean, especially the freight tech stuff, there's a reason why big companies make sure that they're on that, because they understand the return it brings to them. So if you ask someone not in market, if you ask a sales guy how he feels about these awards, like ask a marketer, ask someone in who does SEO work, like they will understand truly what these awards all bring to the table at the end of the day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's easy to kind of look at it and kind of scoff at it. I do think that there's maybe a different approach that you could take, especially when it comes to like just from personal experience. I don't want to submit. I feel, and maybe I should change this, but I feel uncomfortable with submitting myself or my company. Well, maybe not even my company, but like for like a women in logistics or women in
Yeah.
supply chain awards. Typically, you have to submit yourself.
Yes.
And I get the sentiment around like nobody is going to submit you. But
Yeah.
at the same time, like I feel like it would be much more, I would appreciate it so much more
Yeah.
if somebody else submitted me instead of me submitting myself, if that makes sense. And
Totally.
that's where I kind of, especially from like a company standpoint, it's like, well, if somebody is a big fan of ours, shouldn't they submit on our behalf? And I would say, frankly, it just doesn't happen,
Yeah.
especially with talking with other publications and other events that put on very similar style. Other companies are not going to submit you. Other people are not going to submit you. You have to be your biggest fan, and you have to be, to quote the
Totally.
late great Barbara Walters, if you're not proud of your work, why should anybody else be proud of your work? And so
Totally.
kind of thinking from that lens, like I personally do need to submit myself to more of these things in order to get those earned trust badges is what I like to call it, like
Yeah.
your trust moments that you can put in all of the different marketing and things like that. And so as a company, I need to sort of mature in that regard, where it's not just about creating content like this to prove our trust moment or prove our trust value, but it's in addition to getting those widely recognized industry awards and things like the recognition and things like that
Yeah.
that I need to start collecting those and just haven't done it. I haven't prioritized it, but 2026 we're going to be making some content changes, so that's one of the bigger ones for me. And as you sort of round out this conversation, as far as like 2026, are you spending more time on conferences and events or in awards? It sounds like you guys are going to be investing significantly more, or maybe some other companies are going to be pulling back.
Yeah, I would say we are definitely doing more. One, like most, one being because there's someone here to actually run the events appropriately now. Job security. Let's hope so. Um, uh, but two, also because of the investments we made in our technology, right? Like, um, be, because of certain things that we're building for certain platforms, like why would we build that if we're not going to show up and then promote it, too? So there's like a lot of that aspect. I also think that we're getting bigger, and we're for us personally, we're growing very, very quickly. And with that growth becomes new applications, new tools that we can offer individuals. So again, why make that investment if we don't get out there and actually showcase that? I also truly feel that in the world of AI, and we're starting to see this more, that's why we're like, we almost send people more for in-person meetings. I think I think because people are using more AI tools for emails, people are starting to, I don't want to say ignore, but take emails less, I guess, more lightly in their strength.
Well, there's more filters too to that
Yes,
weed out, a lot of these different email. Not everything gets caught, but I mean, I'll probably get 600 spam emails in a day, and that's a
yeah,
light day, or that's a light inbox compared to maybe some brokers and shippers
exactly.
out there.
So it's like, I think what you're gonna actually see is an influx of people going to these in-person events, but being yet being strategic with the money that they put into them, but understanding that, you know what, this might be a customer, this, I mean, especially in the SaaS world, depending on what you do and like what that, I mean, if we're talking about a big $1 million contract, none of that's happening over emails, right?
Yes.
So like getting in front of the people and being able to say, well, if this opportunity lets us get in front of 5 customers, 4 prospects that are just close to signing, and the ability to generate more pipeline, why wouldn't we do that? So I
Pays for
think
itself with one customer.
100%. And again, it depends on what you're doing, because there are different SaaS platforms where if your average deal is $1,000, then like you have to think of it differently. But yeah, if your average deal is $50,000 and you can spend 10,000 and pick up one customer, then you're golden, right? Um, investors out
This is
there are
why
like,
it's so important for like the marketing folks out there and even like content creators and people like that to really understand the cost that goes into some of these not just events but just the ROI that you could potentially get from going to these events, not just with the connections that you're making but maybe the content that you're creating while there, and that you can
yeah,
justify future investments on if you can make those connections that turn into business deals later on. Because in the age of AI, it's going to be so challenging to sort of cut through the noise on social media and email, of course, and all of these different online channels that going to conferences in person, you're going to have to be strategic and you're going to have to do it, whether
yeah,
it's a national or a global conference or more of a regional one, which I think there's a lot of exciting things that are happening around the regional events too. The only conference that I've been to since like June is the Florida Supply Chain Summit, and that's because it was in Jacksonville, so it didn't require a lot of traveling. Obviously, not a lot of traveling. It was 10-minute drive
yeah,
for me, which was fantastic. But the regional conferences, I think are really making headways, and so while it does feel challenging to see so many different new events coming onto the scene, it's up to you to sort of filter through that noise and to find out where your customers are going, where your partners are going, and then make that educated decision, not just from the marketing lens, but also from a connection business lens, and then have the same approach to awards as well. And maybe awards are even a little bit easier to submit yourself to, and submit your company to, because it doesn't require going to a conference in order to do so. So even though it's a lot of, I think, negative connotation is put around pay to play, but this is all a business. You have to choose where to invest not only your money but your time as well. And if there's a lot of benefits to it, maybe you just haven't seen them yet, and you're only seeing the dollar sign, or you're only seeing, oh, that company like paid a bunch of money in order to be up on stage. Well, events cost a lot of money.
yeah,
I think like the venue cost is somewhere around 70 to $100,000 for some of these venues, and like the bigger places like Vegas or Orlando. You have to consider those amounts, and you have to be able to make up for those amounts, especially for an event that's probably a year in advance. And it's so there's a lot of financial background that I think people are missing when they talk about pay to play, going to conferences, and then what kind of ROI you're going to get out of it. So
yeah,
understand your finances, people. Jesus.
yeah.